Recording. Okay, guys, so welcome again to tonight's Masterclass, all about how to stand out as a podcaster. So again, my name is Nikayla. I'm the host of the Side Hustle Pro podcast, which is now a HubSpot podcast. I went from indie podcast to HubSpot podcast. And my goal for tonight is really just to teach you my tips, how to stand out as a podcaster, even if you have no prior experience. So I'll be walking you through how to stand out in this crowded podcast space these days, how to narrow down your own podcast topics so you can stand out, and then also how to start building a bigger audience. And then also, of course, I'll share how you can get coaching from me and continue to get these kind of podcast business tips and advice from me inside of my Podcast Moguls program. So if you stay until the end, by the way, we will have question and answers. So again, you can ask me all of your podcasting questions. And then also I'll be sharing a free Libsyn promo code as a bonus. So you can get started today for free. If you want to host your podcast on Libsyn, you can just try it out for the next month and a half, absolutely free. I have used Libsyn since I started, still on it, and really recommend it. So let me know who's here. Jump over to the Q&A because I can't figure out the chat right now. And let me know with a 1, 2, or 3, just which kind of bucket you fall in and what brought you here tonight. So 1, have you been thinking about starting a podcast? Are you overwhelmed with how to start? 2, like, are you and your friends, kind of have this podcast idea and you want to make sure you do it right? And then 3, have you already started? Have you already started your podcast, or you are getting ready to start? You're like right there, just need to press send and want to make sure that you are being strategic. So let me go over. Okay, I'm seeing, all right, a lot of 3s. All right, so you guys are almost there. Okay, cool. So this is perfect for you. So you can do some refinement before you press submit and publish. And for everyone else, you're all in the right place, okay? Because it's really important that you understand the podcasting landscape before you step into the arena. So let me do a quick rewind about myself. Again, I'm Nikayla, right? And I launched my own podcast, Side Hustle Pro, back in 2016. And since then, it's amassed over 8 million downloads. I actually meant to look tonight because I think I might have crossed 9 mil right now. And since then, I've done multiple 6 figures in sponsorship. While I launched my podcast, it was actually my side hustle. And I worked full-time at NPR, National Public Radio at the time, where I led the digital marketing for some of your favorite podcasts like How I Built This, Code Switch, and more. And I have over 15 years of experience as a marketer. So in 2017, I was actually able to quit my job to podcast full-time. And this is the Facebook post that I put up when I quit my job, because I was very excited and I recorded an episode about it. So you can go scroll back to December 2017 to listen. And 5 years later, in 2022, Side Hustle Pro was inducted into the Podcast Hall of Fame. So a lot can happen in 5 years, you guys. 5 years goes by like this, and a lot can happen. So let's set up your next 5 years. I just want to throw in the fact that I'm born in Jamaica and grew up in the Boogie Down Bronx. This has nothing to do with podcasting, but you got to know where I'm from and my mindset. And I was raised, and this is what shapes who I am and my perspective. So another thing that shapes me is this desire I've always had to just have freedom in my career, just have flexibility, mainly around not having to ask someone for vacation days, not having to ask someone if I need to make a doctor's appointment, all of that. So podcasting was what finally gave me that freedom and flexibility. When I had a job, when I was working at NPR, I had very few vacation days. So few, as a matter of fact, that when my husband and I got married, we couldn't even take a honeymoon because I didn't have enough PTO days. Y'all know how that goes. And thanks to podcasting, I was able to quit my job a year later, and we went on that honeymoon. So delayed gratification, a year after we got married. This is me in Zanzibar on our honeymoon. And, it was the honeymoon of my dreams. And I love this photo because it just goes to show that whatever it is, whatever reason it is that you're starting podcasting, you will attain that if you just keep going after it. So for me, again, it was freedom and flexibility. Let me know in the Q&A, what's your reason for starting? Like, what, if you could choose one adjective, like what is really driving you to start? And again, because I can work from anywhere, when I had my baby, my pandemic baby, April 2020, and, couldn't get him into daycare, didn't know what was safe, I ended up staying home for 2 years with him. And because my husband and I were both side hustlers, we're both juggling parenting, careers, and our many entrepreneurial passions, flexibility is huge for us. So when I had a job, I had little or no family leave, but podcasting allowed me to stay home with my son for 24 months while earning an income. And this is why I personally am so passionate about it and why I teach this, because I want you to go into this with a business mindset. So on the road to podcasting, though, I know it seems like I've done everything right and, I've gone from here to here, but I've also done a whole lot of things wrong. And I think it's important for me to share this so there will be bumps along the road. So first of all, this was me in May 2015. Okay, I look pretty happy, right? This is me in front of the University of Michigan School of Business. I am graduating here with my MBA, and you can't tell, but inside I am freaking out because I was rejected from my MBA internship at Google at this point. So I was graduating with no job. I was moving back to DC to live with my then boyfriend, now husband, but I had no income. Okay, I wasn't bringing nothing to the table. And you know how dicey that can feel, right, ladies? So I started blogging again. The reason I started blogging again was because I knew, like many of you who are here might be feeling, I knew I wanted and also needed to build my personal brand. In 2023, you cannot be out here without understanding your personal brand and making sure that you're making intentional moves to build that. But I wasn't sure what that entailed. I didn't know what that meant back then. So like many of you, I started following people who were steps ahead of me. So I started following online branding coaches like Amy Porterfield, Maya Elias here on the right, and to really try to get my head wrapped around like, how do you blog? How do you brand yourself? And so that inspired me to launch my blog. And it was very tacky, as you can see, capital T. It was me pulling together artwork on my own in Canva. I had content at the time, but I didn't have a real purpose. Okay. The important thing, though, was that I got started. And I learned that you have to be willing to take the first step, even when you don't know where it will lead. So as I continued to vlog, I started realizing this common thread. I love sharing the stories of Black women side hustlers and entrepreneurs. That's what got me going. That's what inspired me. And so that's when the idea for my own podcast, Side Hustle Pro podcast, was born. And a year before launching Side Hustle Pro, I heard of podcasting. I just got into the loop about podcasting like maybe the summer before, right? Then a year later, I launched my own podcast. And in the first 7 days after launching Side Hustle Pro, I landed in the top charts. So here I am on the right in the top 10 in marketing, and on the left in the top 10 in marketing, and on the right, the top 40 in business. I'm number 37, and I'm above people who I learned from, like Amy Porterfield, like how crazy and surreal is that? So I went hard on promotion that summer. I got t-shirts printed out with my Side Hustle Pro logo. I launched a t-shirt shop. And the main thing I was starting to realize as I was attending these conferences was that if I took this seriously, okay, if I went about this with a business mindset, I could quit my job. I could do this full time. So this is why I am so passionate about teaching the business mindset behind podcasting, because you absolutely can do it. Okay. The thing I had to study and the thing I teach now is podcast monetization. I learned, as with anything, you have to spend money to make money. So I invested in myself. I invested in courses to learn more. And at the time, no one was teaching a course like what I teach now. There was nothing out there like this. So I had to invest $1,197 in a 2-day event sponsorship intensive. Okay, event sponsorship, not podcast sponsorship. It wasn't podcast specific, but I was just that eager, eager, craving this information to learn. So I went to that, and then I learned the business of pitching sponsors. And so 6 months after launching my podcast, I pitched my very first sponsor cold, meaning I didn't know anyone at the company. I didn't have any connections. And I earned my first $4,000 in podcast sponsorship from that pitch. So around this time, more buzz started picking up for Side Hustle Pro. It was featured by Apple in all these different categories. 3 years after launching, I started being featured by the Today Show, Oprah Magazine, Forbes. And by the way, all of this, as this is happening, is surreal to me. I'm like, I can't believe this podcast that I started in my living room, that I did on the side after work while I'm working at NPR, has grown to this. But I kept going. That same year, 3 years after launching, I did my first live show with, full circle moment, Maya Elias, one of the first people I learned personal branding from. So that's just a taste of my story. I could go on and on, but I'm here to share with you how I went from graduating with no job and no money to the Podcast Hall of Fame. And so I'm here to teach you my top 3 tips. You could walk away from this class tonight with these tips and make such an impact on your podcast. So I'm going to go over them real quick and then break them down individually. So now's the time to get ready to screenshot, write your notes, all that jazz, because I am about to get real detailed, okay? All right, so my first tip is to stand out as a podcaster, you have to become known for one thing. Tip number 2, to stand out as a podcaster, you need to narrow down your podcast topic, all right? We'll get into this. And tip number 3 is to start building a big audience, you need to target the right followers, okay? Now let's break these down one by one. Let's do it. And remember, drop your questions in Q&A. My teammate, Joanna, will be compiling all of those, and we're gonna talk about everything you have questions about during Q&A, all right? So make sure you're staying until the end. All right, so tip number 1. To stand out as a podcaster, you have to become known for one thing. All right, some of y'all are going to hate me for this, but you have to, okay? I know most people think that you need to keep your podcast super broad so you don't put yourself in a box. Nowadays, because you've seen the success of a lot of these conversational shows, everyone wants to start a show with their friend and just talk about hot topics. There's a rhyme and a reason to that, okay? Those people, those podcasters that are successful, they are still known for one thing. Most people also think it's cool to make their podcast title vague or a play on words. Stop it. So, because here's what happens when you think that and when you do that. You make it hard for people to find your show. You cannot stand out as a podcaster if people can't find your show, all right? And you make it hard for people to know what you're an expert in. And then you miss out. You miss out on growing your personal brand, being called on as an authority on a specific topic. You miss out on making money, essentially, when you do this. So here's what you should do instead to stand out as a podcaster. You have to get really clear on what your show is about. So, I mentioned those conversational podcasts where we talk about hot topics. They are still known for one thing. Why? Because they add in consistent segments that shape the flow of their show, and you know what to expect. You have to let your audience know what to expect. Pick a niche, AKA your one thing, and then make it easy for people to find you and know what that one thing is. Don't hop all over the place every single episode. Make it easy for people to understand what you will bring to the table each and every time, what they can expect. That is your one thing. What can we expect? So I am not just preaching to you guys, I'm preaching to myself. This is a constant reminder. I started out making this mistake. And so that's why I teach you, so you don't make the same mistake. So when I launched my blog, it was called Kayla K Speaks. It was vague. It was a play on my name, Nikayla, and I thought I was being cute. Kayla K Speaks. People were like, do you speak? What is this? I don't know. And they couldn't pronounce it, and they kept spelling it wrong. On top of that, I didn't stand for one thing. I was blogging about everything. I was all over the place. It wasn't until I got really clear on what I wanted my blog to be about that I zeroed in on the concept of side hustle pros, and specifically Black women side hustlers who were growing into full-time entrepreneurs. That is when I hit my sweet spot, okay? It was very clear what the show is about. And so I was able to build an audience because more and more people were able to find my show and also know what my show was about and share it with other people who had the same interest. I also have many moguls inside of Podcast Moguls who deal with this dilemma as well, okay? So this is Erica McAfee. She started her show and, like many people, named it after herself, the Erica and McAfee Show. And, we love putting our face on the title, on the image logo. Nothing wrong with that. However, what does your name stand for? People can't look that up in a dictionary. That means nothing to them. You have to make it clear what your topic is with your podcast name. So she, while in Podcast Moguls, rebranded to the Sisters-in-Laws podcast. Her podcast is about sharing stories about pregnancy and infancy loss from Black women. And through the title, as well as the artwork, she is signaling what that's about. Now, your podcast logo and name itself doesn't have to do all the work. The rest of the work is done by her episode titles and by her podcast description. All of those together, when you come across that or when you're searching for this topic, her show is going to come up first. And so that is how you make sure that your audience knows your one thing. Oh, I can't say this enough. This is so, so important, you guys. Let me re-emphasize this, okay? Make it easy for people to find you. When people are searching for Black Women Side Hustle Podcast, Black Women Entrepreneur Podcast, Black Women, Black-owned business podcast, Side Hustle Pro is coming up, all right? So it starts with your podcast name, your podcast description, and your episode titles. So let's recap real quick. This is tip number 1. To stand out as a podcaster, you have to become known for one thing. So get clear on what your show is about. Pick a niche, AKA your one thing, and make it easy for people to find you and know what your one thing is, okay? All righty. So now let's get into tip number 2. To stand out as a podcaster, you need to narrow down your podcast topic. So these tip 1 and 2 go hand in hand, okay? You can't do one without the other. So I find that a lot of people, again, the podcast topic is not all the way fleshed out before they launch. And that's where we run into problems with building our audience and standing out. So how do you pick a niche and become known for one thing? Well, it starts with your topic, first and foremost. So before you finalize your topic, you should be asking yourself these questions. What would you talk about if you were not making any money? What are you passionate about? What do you have a strong opinion on? What's your expertise? What do people always ask your advice about? Who do you want to impact? What are you genuinely interested in? What do you want to be known for? And also, what do you have unanswered questions about? You don't necessarily have to be an expert in your topic. So these are just questions to start prompting the brainstorming, okay? You don't necessarily have to be an expert. If you are an expert and you want to talk about something you're an expert in, cool. But I didn't know about anything about owning a business, entrepreneurship, none of that. I wanted to be the, conduit between the questions I have and other people who have those questions. So that's why I started Side Hustle Pro, to ask the people who have done it, how they did it. All right. So after going through all those questions and the brainstorming that comes to mind, start to write down a list of topics. And then you're going to narrow it down to 1 to 3 ideas, okay? And then you're going to identify 5 to 10 other podcasts that talk about your 1 to 2 ideas of topics. So while you're looking at these podcasts, everything from their logo, their episode titles, checking out some episodes, pay attention to what themes are covered, and then what are they not talking about, okay? What will you cover that they don't? Something is always missing. Before I started Side Hustle Pro, I was looking for this content. I was looking for more stories from Black women entrepreneurs, and I couldn't find it. And I realized that's what was missing. I needed to start it. So what can you talk about that's currently missing from the dialogue or just not done in a way that you want to see it done? What can you talk about that no one else can? And why are you the perfect person to tackle this subject? think about all of that. The biggest thing you have to remember is you need to, and you absolutely are capable of telling a story no one else can tell, because no one else can tell the story that involves your experiences. So whatever topic you choose, make sure to infuse your story and your perspective into your episodes. And you do that by starting with what? Your secret sauce. Your secret sauce is sometimes disguised as your failure or your shortcomings, or even your quirks. You notice that I started tonight's masterclass by sharing a little bit about myself, because that's my secret sauce. My journey to podcasting is my secret sauce. And believe it or not, it's why a lot of people connect with me. So I make sure that I share that, and I share that in my solo episodes as well. This is the number one way to start building your personal brand. So let's recap tip number 2. To stand out as a podcaster, you need to narrow down your podcast topic. And you do this by writing down your ideas, then whittling it down to 1 to 3 ideas, then researching those ideas and identifying what's missing from the current podcast conversations. Okay, then you're going to tell a story that no one else can tell, aka weaving in your own personal lens. And you do that by starting with your secret sauce. All right. Quick pulse check. Let me know if this is helpful, you guys. Give me a 2 over in Q&A if this is helpful. Let me know whatchamacallit. Give me a 2 just to let me know that you're following along and you're finding this helpful. All right. I'm seeing the 2s coming in. Good. I want to be as helpful as possible. And again, that's why we have Q&A. So stick around until the end, no matter what. All right. So tip number 3, to start building this big audience that everyone wants to build when they have a podcast, you need to learn to target the right followers. So most people think that you need a lot of followers on Instagram to promote anything. And it's not quite that black and white, okay? Most people also think that your Instagram feed needs to be perfectly coordinated with filtered photos in this perfect sequence. And that's not the case either. But here's what happens when you think that. You get overwhelmed, analysis paralysis, right? And you don't even try to create content. And then you miss out on opportunities to share with your audience. And then your audience is going to what? Remain stagnant. So here's what you should do instead to, grow your audience and to really start growing the audience for your podcast. Just focus on getting in front of the right followers. What do I mean by the right followers? I mean the people who will be interested in your podcast, okay? These are the people that will click the link in your bio and grow your podcast downloads and be interested in what you post. So to demonstrate how this is done, specifically with Instagram, because that is one of the most impactful and effective platforms for podcasters right now still. I'm going to share with you a case study from one of our Podcast Moguls alum. So I'll share how to build your podcast audience by targeting the right followers on Instagram. So let's get right to it. So this is Ashley of the Stacks in the City podcast. Again, she's a Podcast Moguls alum, and she used what is called the Side Hustle Pro OMG formula to gain her first 1,000 downloads and keep going from there. So the O with the M and the G in OMG, they each stand for a step in the process to this formula. So step 1 is the O, obsessively audit. What I mean by that is before you create any content on any platform, as a matter of fact, but specifically in this case, Instagram, you need to be auditing what is working for your perfect listener. So inside of Podcast Moguls, I have a whole lesson on how to understand who your perfect listener is. We don't have time for that tonight, but I will go over how to find them on Instagram, okay? So first of all, you're going to obsessively audit content around your podcast topic. So nowadays, this wasn't even out when I started doing this, but now you can look up specific hashtags, Black women in finance, personal finance podcasts, or side hustles, Black women side hustles, Black women entrepreneurs. And you can see which content is rising to the top as top posts, right? What does well in this niche? Is it reels? Is it infographics? Is it high-res photos of a face with a long caption? All of this you're going to make note of as you audit. So you're going to look at what's going on. You're also going to audit the profiles of the influencers and the other thought leaders in this space that are doing really well. And you do this not to copy, but again, to understand what content buckets you should be focusing on, where to spend your time, because this is what does well. So if I know that infographics does really well, then I'm going to get up to speed on making infographics. You understand? So step 2 is making friends. Again, when you know who your perfect listener is, AKA your target podcast listener, you're going to know where they hang out online, and you're going to know how to find them based on who they're following. And your job then is to make friends, AKA introduce yourself. So I treat social media networking no differently than in-person networking. So in this case, instead of handing someone your business card at a networking event or going up and saying, hi, my name is this, you follow them, and you do so as a connection, not in some like follow for follow foolishness, but literally when you follow someone and they come back to your profile, and because you have obsessively audited, you have created and are creating content that appeals to them, you know, they're going to say, oh, wait, Side Hustle Pro, wait, this is interesting. Oh, wait, look at these Black women with side hustlers. Look at these Black women entrepreneurs, or oh, look at this young person who's talking about personal finance, and she's in her 20s, and wow, she owns her own house in DC. Wait a second, I want to know more about this. You know, that was Ashley's case. So when you do it this way, when you're truly following people who are interested in what your topic is, they will follow you back. And that is how you start to grow your genuine, loyal, truly interested in your content audience. So that's the M in OMG. Step 2, make friends. And here's what's possible with making friends, AKA connecting with the right followers on Instagram. This is an actual comment I received when I started my OMG process way back in 2016 on Side Hustle Pro on Instagram. The Nakira Show commented, listening in now. I don't know how you found me on IG, but thank God you did. My work days will be spent catching up on past podcasts. So again, I knew exactly who I was looking for on Instagram. I knew their profile. I knew what they were about. So I went out there and I introduced myself by following people, and they would thank me for following them and then immediately go binge listening to my podcast. This is the result of effective OMG. Here's another one. She said, OMG, your friend requests really brightened my day. I love your podcast. I actually binge listen to them and they're wonderful. Keep it up, girl. So, and that's what's possible. So I just shared like, oh my God, glad to connect on IG. I've been reaching out to people who I think would be in my target audience. So glad I found you. And so a lot of these people are my IG friends now. So the G in OMG is step 3, which is to go over the data. So this process, it takes time. You have to study what's working. That means each and every week you go into your Instagram insights, which, by the way, you have to make sure your account is a business account to get your insights, but you go in there and you see what content are people engaging with the most, which content has the best activity, the most impressions and reach and interactions. You see what times your followers are most active. And so you start to plan accordingly. So you use the insights and the data to inform what you schedule out for next week. And yes, I said schedule because I'm all about being efficient with how we spend our time on these social media platforms. So that's OMG in a nutshell. And here's what happened to Ashley as a result of following the OMG process. So Ashley went from having 758 to 1,216 Instagram followers in less than 8 weeks in Podcast Moguls, okay? And Stacks in the City, her podcast, went from having 300 to 1,400 monthly downloads in less than 8 weeks. Powerful stuff, you guys. If you didn't do the math right there, that's a 4x jump. Okay. Would you like that for your show? Whatever your downloads are, whatever your downloads are when you start, would you like a 4x jump? You know, I think everybody would like a 4x jump in their downloads. So why is getting in front of the right followers so important? Because as your followers grow, so do your downloads and so does your audience. So as a marketer, I think of all of this very strategically. I'm not here to play a numbers vanity game. I'm here to truly work on the correlation between follower growth and download growth for the podcast, because that is growing my audience. So that's exactly what Ashley experienced. So Stacks in the City landed in the top business charts on Apple Podcasts. And the top business charts, it features 200 podcasts out of hundreds of thousands of podcasts. So to land in the top business charts after doing these steps is incredible, okay? That just shows the impact of being intentional and strategic in Podcast Moguls. So because of the Stacks in the City platform, as she grew and her interest shifted, she actually expanded her personal brand and income generating opportunities beyond podcasting. Nowadays, you can find her at live whatchamacallit, I think she's going to be at an expo next. Right here, she had a house hunters workshop for sale. So because of the audience she was able to build, she's now able to do these other revenue generating opportunities. And same thing for you. When you use podcasting to build a platform, you can use it to create courses like I have done, speak on stages, appear on TV, magazines. It really all depends on what you're interested in, but it is such a powerful tool for building your platform and brand. So here's some more student results. This is posted recently. This is someone who's only 12 episodes in, and she's already reached a milestone of over 1,000 downloads. Okay. Incredible. I love seeing this, and you see more student results like this inside of our Podcast Moguls community. She says, thanks so much, Nikayla, for your guidance and getting me started. Another result real quick. This is from a student who posted this just 2 weeks ago. She says, hi, Moguls, wanted to share 3 exciting wins. So she received her first official unsolicited invite to cover a local event on her podcast. She was approved for a press pass. That's another big hack you guys might not know. When you launch a podcast, you take it seriously and you show that it's a serious show, you can start to get press passes for events where you may have had to pay. So the ticket for her event would have been $650. But instead she applied for and got a press pass. And I did that too in the early days of my podcast. I applied for a press pass at a really expensive conference and then got to sit right next to one of my mentors in my head as a result. So huge hack right there. And then number 3, she said, after following the OMG method, she's gained 35 new followers so far. And that's just so far. As people get really ramped up and in their bag, it really starts to expedite. So just want to share the results, okay, that people get from working with me. So now let's go back to the slides. So as your downloads grow, so do your opportunities, all right? So let's recap real quick. To start building a big audience, you need to target the right followers. Do not waste your time just broadly targeting people. Target the right followers, and that's how you start to grow. So you have to obsessively audit, make new friends, go over the data, repeat. All right, another check-in time, y'all. Is this helpful for you? Give me a yes in the chat, in the Q&A, if it is. All right, I'm gonna scroll over there real quick. And remember, I'm going to get to all of your specific questions in Q&A, so do stick around. We're almost at Q&A, by the way, so do stick around to the end. Okay, so now, you guys, just to rewind real quick, how to stand out as a podcaster. I want to go over each tip again. So tip number 1, to stand out as a podcaster, you have to become known for one thing. And if you have more questions on that, please feel free to let me know what your specific question is, because I'm happy to break it down more. Tip number 2 is to stand out as a podcaster, you need to narrow down your podcast topic. And tip number 3, to start building a big audience, you need to target the right followers. Okay. So right now I'm seeing some of your questions, and I know that going into podcasting, like some of you guys might be feeling different ways, right? You might be feeling one of 3 ways, I think. So first, you might be feeling scattered, like you want to launch and grow your podcast, but your strategy feels all over the place right now. Or you might be feeling stuck, like your podcast is not growing fast enough or getting enough downloads. You might not even know what a download is, right? And you know the lack of a proven blueprint is holding you back. And then 3, you might feel, all right, I'm determined. You know the value of having a powerful platform like a regular podcast, That's regular content that's going out into the atmosphere, and you're ready to do what it takes to grow it. So let me know if which one of these buckets are you guys in? Are you stuck? Are you scattered? Are you stuck? Are you determined? Let me know. How are you feeling right now so I can better assist you? Sean says 1, so you're feeling stuck. All right. Who else? Who else has understands like which bucket they're in right now? Oh, determined. Ooh, determined folk in the business. Yes, yes, yes. That's where you really need to be. So for all of you folks, I want you to know that you have options. Okay. You can keep trying to DIY your podcast yourself with tips gathered all over social media and YouTube. The only problem with that, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. I'm not going to shade you for that at all. You have to do what works for you. But the only problem with that is not everyone is qualified to speak. A lot of people, so I teach about the business of podcasting, and I want you guys to grow your platform and be able to take it and do with it, launch yourself, use it as a launching pad to do things like speaking, press, and also make money. Okay. Not everyone's making money from this show. Not everyone has that many downloads, and yet they're speaking about podcasting. So you have to really be careful when you're DIYing. But you also have the option of making podcasting a priority and using my proven roadmap that tells you exactly where to start and what steps to take. And when I say what steps to take, it's like now being 7 years into this, there are things I know what I would have done differently. There are things I know like what I absolutely would not focus on starting out, and when I would start focusing on things, when to pitch sponsors, how to be effective with pitching sponsors, all of that. And how I went from being an indie podcaster to on a network now that pays me. So all of that is what I mean by my blueprint, if we want to get specific. And so I just want to invite you all inside of Podcast Moguls officially so that you can learn from me and be inside of this community, this inner circle to continue learning from me. So Podcast Moguls is for you if you're at the stage where you want to get access to my inner circle of podcast business advice, have a top podcast, get speaking engagements from your podcast, grow your personal brand from your podcast, and make money from your podcast. So if you're interested in any of those, Podcast Moguls is for you. So Podcast Moguls is an accelerator program, okay, that teaches my proven effective marketing strategies to podcasters who want to have a hit podcast, grow a large following, and make money from their podcasts. And there are 3 parts to Podcast Moguls. So it's not only the course itself, but part 1 is the course. It's an 8-step podcast success curriculum where I go through everything with video lessons, tutorials, templates, swipe files, and guides. So here are all the modules. Module 0, fundamentals, everything you need to know about equipment, setup, hosting, publishing your show. Module 1, refining your topic, finding your perfect listener. Module 2, positioning your podcast for launching. Module 3, launching that show. Module 4, marketing your podcast through Instagram. Module 5, marketing your podcast, growing your email list. Module 6, marketing your podcast and Facebook and Instagram advertising 101. And module 7, monetizing, positioning your podcast for monetization. And module 8, creating your winning sponsorship pitch to start landing those sponsors. All right. Then part 2 of Podcast Moguls is the community. So you've seen bits and pieces of what we're saying over in the community. So this is the inner circle that, again, you guys have access to me each and every time we have a coaching call, and then in between inside the community to answer your questions, give you feedback, give you my expert thoughts on podcasting. And then we also share our wins. So here is a comment from Felicia of the Trill MBA podcast. And she shared when she hit number 53 in iTunes careers. It's now Apple Podcasts. But guys, again, each category only has 200 podcasts out of hundreds of thousands of podcasts. So when moguls are hitting the top 100, top 50, top 200, that is huge. Okay. And of course, people come in to share their wins and their challenges. And then part 3 of Podcast Moguls is the coaching. So we meet monthly for video group coaching calls with myself. You will receive personal guidance from me, personal instruction and me answering your challenges. So each and every time you join, you can come with all your questions. All right. We do deep dives on topics. Again, it's me coaching you guys. I don't have any like assistant coaches or anyone else who fills in. So you're picking my brain. Okay. You're getting my blueprint, my success tools, everything that I learn as I'm learning it. I'm sharing it with you guys, what's working now. So this was actually a session we had with my editor and producer who came in to give some more deep dives on actual editing processes that go beyond the scope of what I even knew. So if you have any editing questions and things like that, the replay of this is still up. When you join Podcast Moguls, you can scroll over to that lesson right now and catch up on this. So I just want to share a little bit of what people see inside of Podcast Moguls, like the results that they see. This is Shirley. She's the host of the She's Got Drive podcast. Some of you may have listened to it. And she wrote that I only started implementing her marketing strategies about 3 months ago. And this is what I found. I had at that point 25,000 downloads. And in the last 3 months, I'm now at 46,000 downloads. Her strategy absolutely works. So that's almost doubling your downloads in 3 months inside of Podcast Moguls. Like, these are the kind of results I love to see. And this is absolutely doable. This comes with joining and implementing the things that you learn in the lessons. You will see those results. I also want to share what Fritz Charles of the Coin Gamma podcast had to share. So Fritz came in and he already had a podcast, and he wasn't really sure how to market it, how to grow it. It's about cryptocurrency, and he was just because he loves podcast, he loves cryptocurrency and talking about this topic. Which, he started getting flown out to speak at international conferences. He wasn't even expecting that. So he said, I was able to speak at over 5 conferences last year, even being flown in internationally to speak at conferences. It all came because of the podcast. So again, this is the power of podcasting. What you're able to do with this platform, it's a launching pad for wherever you want to go. You want to be a speaker? Start a podcast. So to be clear on the value of the program, and I know some of you are asking, what it costs or where to join. I'm getting to that right now. So you're getting this 8-module course with monthly live coaching sessions from me. That's a minimum value of $4,000. Like, if you were to book a coaching session with me at this point, I don't even want to get into what that would cost, but it's definitely minimum $4,000. Okay. That one-on-one hour time with me each and every month. When you join, you get a minimum, you get 4 sessions, 4 live coaching calls when you join, but actually I never turn anyone away. If you want to keep joining in, there are people who joined Podcast Moguls when it first launched in 2018, and they still come to coaching calls, and I don't mind whatsoever. So it's the value of this is really beyond that. You're also getting lifetime community access to our private community. Again, I know communities that charge like $197 a month, or $2,364 a year. I know communities that kick you out if you stop paying or after you've joined the program for a year. We don't do all of that in Podcast Moguls. As long as this program exists, you have access to it. Okay. You also have access to all of my sponsorship pitch letters and media kits. This in and of itself is an $1,197 value. You guys know this because I went to a 2-day intensive just for this and paid $1,197 just for this. Okay. And again, it wasn't even podcast specific. Now you have a podcast specific sponsorship module, 2 modules on this. You're also getting my guest pitch templates. So now, 7 years into podcasting, I've interviewed amazing guests, and people almost never say no, So I share with you my templates, aka what works in your outreach strategy and when to pitch, because you shouldn't start out pitching certain people. You should start out, with people you're more connected to first. So I share all of that in the program. And then plus, when you invest, you also get Master the Gram, which is an even deeper dive specific program just about building an engaged audience on Instagram. That by itself is $297 if you just buy that course, but it's included inside of Podcast Moguls for no additional fee. So you're getting all of this plus Master the Gram. Plus, when you invest, you also get my Goal Getter Action Plan, which by itself, if you just buy that by itself, it's $98. But you're getting all of this plus Master the Gram, plus the Goal Getter Action Plan. And in case you are not counting all that up, the cost of, the 8-module course, monthly live coaching sessions, lifetime community access, all of my sponsorship pitch letters and media kits, guest pitch templates, plus Master the Gram, plus the Goal Getter Action Plan, all of that is $8,553. That's the value of it all. Of course, that's not the cost. That's not what I'm going to charge you. You actually have two options. So the cost of Podcast Moguls option 1 is $19.97, or you can do 4 monthly payments of $500. And you can join now. Head over to sidehustlepro.co/podcast moguls. Joanna, can you drop that in the Q&A hyperlink so everybody can just head over to that? So again, head over to podcastmoguls.com sidehustlepro.co/podcast moguls. There is a bonus for paying in full, you guys, and I'll share that in one moment. So again, doors are now officially open. And as you are contemplating joining, by the way, let me know when you join so that I can shout you out. But if you need, if you're thinking and ruminating over this decision, I just want to share with you how I make my decisions. Like when I was going to that 2-day sponsorship intensive, that was the most expensive thing I'd ever invested in, business development wise. And so I did the would it be worth it if equation to help me make that decision. So that's how I always recommend everyone else make their business investment decisions. So would it be worth it to you if Podcast Moguls helps you elevate your brand and land brand partnerships? Yes. If so, would getting approached with media opportunities be worth it to you? Yes. Then if so, I invite you to really consider and join sidehustlepro.co/podcast moguls, because these are the kind of opportunities you're able to get through going into your podcast with a business mindset and treating it as such. This is what happened to me as a result of me elevating my personal brand with podcasting. I was called up to be on the Today Show. I did not even pitch myself to the Today Show. So some of you emailed me in advance and said, hey, are we going to cover pitching and all of that? I didn't even pitch myself to the Today Show. A producer found me because of the work I did in becoming known for one thing and making it easy to find me. They found me. And they knew exactly how to contact me because I make it easy to find me and to know what my one thing is. So again, doors are open at sidehustlepro.co/podcast moguls. Do let me know when you join so I can shout you out. I can't wait to work with you guys. I can't wait to coach you. I can't wait to make you and help you be the amazing podcaster and branded podcaster that you can be. This not only happened to me, by the way, with elevating my personal brand, this also happened to Tolu of the UI Narrative podcast. So I actually have an episode on Side Hustle Pro with Tolu. So she posted this on Instagram and she says how it started. And it's just her behind the mic getting started as a podcaster. And then she shares how it's going. And it's just simple picture of the Google logo. And that's because a few months into podcasting, she was approached by Google to sponsor her show, her independent show with, fewer downloads than some of the big guys on these huge networks. Why? Because she made it easy for them to know what she's known for, what her one thing is. And they wanted to get in front of people who are interested in that one thing, which was user interface design and that part of technology, because Google wants to recruit more diverse people in that particular arena. So think about these questions, okay? Would it be worth it to you if Podcast Moguls helped you land features in magazines? Someone else reached out to me again about pitching to magazines. So the best advice I can give you is to have an awesome portfolio before you pitch anyone. How do you do that? You do things like making sure your podcast gets the exposure and awareness and audience growth that it deserves. So Getting features in magazines, yes, that increases your downloads and your reach. And going through Podcast Moguls and understanding how to do that makes it even easier. So would increasing your downloads and reach be worth it to you? Yes. Then go over to sidehustlepro.co/podcast moguls. Do go ahead and let me know when you join, because I absolutely, again, I want to coach you and I want you to grow your show business wise. So this is Shayla of Black Girls Wine. She actually has about 2 podcasts now. And she was featured in Black Enterprise here on the left. And then on the right, the Richmond Times Dispatch, all about her show, all about her podcast. So I've learned that there's only one way to learn, which is through action. So I always encourage people, when they're ready, to take that step and to start putting action behind their goals and action behind their dreams. And so again, I'm going to give you a little bonus for doing that action by paying in full. So my pay in full bonus, I have a few for you guys. All right. So first of all, I want to give you the pitch email that landed me my first $4,000 in sponsorship. Let's get right to the money. When you join and you pay in full, you're going to get that email, and you can use it, swipe file, to start pitching sponsors and to start negotiating and to getting your first few contracts for your show. All right. I'm also going to give you, when you pay in full, my 5-day branding blitz. So these are the exact the exact steps I followed the 5 days leading up to my launch that helped me launch with a bang. So again, launched in the top 10 in marketing. There on the left is the marketing charts, and top 37 in business. I was the 37th in business on my launch week. I will share that with you. That is a pay in full bonus. Another pay in full bonus, all right, is my pitch email to Apple that landed me in the new and noteworthy section. So you might notice when you open up your podcast app that you see podcasts that are featured. You can actually get featured, but you need a really strong, compelling pitch. So I share with you what I use, and so that you can go ahead and start to pitch yourself for opportunities to get more exposure for your podcast within the apps themselves. And then finally, the last pay in full bonus, you guys, is my pitch email that landed me my first international speaking engagement in Barbados. Again, I sent a cold pitch. I did not know this conference organizer, but I sent a pitch and they flew me out. So I got a vacation and I got to speak about something that I love speaking about, and, to an audience, my, Caribbean massive, and, teach something that I really, really am passionate about to an audience I'm passionate about. So that was just like a beautiful win for me. And I share this with you guys so you can see the steps that you can do to write a really compelling pitch email, so you can start to get booked to speak at different places, get those reps in, because the more you speak, the better you become. And, the more you can command as a speaking rate. So here, that is a painful bonus as well. All right. So we're about to get into Q&A. Please drop the Q&A in the chat. Whatever questions you have, please drop them in the chat. And right now, I'm just going to share a few more thoughts from students from Podcast Moguls about the power of Podcast Moguls before we get into Q&A. So this is from Alicia, Dr. Alicia Franklin. She now has her PhD. She is the woman behind the Research Her podcast. And when she joined Podcast Moguls, this was a few years ago, but she said, I'm sharing my growth chart to show the power of this program. She said, I started podcasting in November. I had no clue what in the world I was doing, nor how to market the episodes. I just thought the people were going to show up. How many of you thought that, right? Oh, they're just going to show up. She said, I obsessed over the course and relaunched a podcast within a month of joining the program with so much more vision, thanks to Nikayla. I went from hundreds of downloads to thousands. That's the kind of jump I want you guys to be making. So I think the average podcast receives something like, I don't even know, maybe like 48 downloads. I don't know what the latest number is, but it's something very, very low, definitely not in the hundreds. I don't want you guys to be starting there. I don't want you guys to stay there if you're currently there. Your podcast needs to be getting thousands of downloads, okay? And so what I teach inside of Podcast Moguls is to help you get there. So you can see her chart that she shared. She went from having like 184 downloads in a whole month to starting to grow gradually. And she kept growing gradually from there, 1,700 one month, 2,100 the next month, and up and up. And that's what I want for you as well. This is what Nia of the Dreams of Black Wall Street podcast had to share as well. She actually changed her name. That's why I always trip over it. But originally, Nia joined the program with a completely different podcast. It was she had episodes and everything, different name, different topic, all of that. But through going through the work and the exercises and homework that you have to do in refining your topic and truly deciding, is this the topic that I love talking about? She gravitated to this podcast about Black Wall Street. That's what she really had in her heart. And then after she launched, it surpassed 100,000 downloads in just 4 months. And then after that, BBC News reached out to her to interview her and produce a 4-minute short video with her narrating the story of the Tulsa Race Massacre. BBC would have never known that she existed had she not put that out there. And when they were looking, it was easy for them to find her. She made it easy for them to find her. So when they were looking for a narrator, it was easy to reach out to her. So that's what I mean when I want you to make it easy, and I want you to make it clear what your topic is and clear what you're known for, so you can start getting these opportunities as well. And a lot of people go through this refinement process inside of Podcast Moguls, where they start out broad. They may even start out with a completely different idea. And I help you to get to that place, okay? I can help you to get to that place. You came here tonight for a reason. I can help you to get to that place. So a lot of you are, whatchamacallit, asking me what is a download. Then you definitely need to join, okay? Because I want you to get to that place where you're understanding the business of podcasting. Downloads are everything in podcasting. You need to understand what a download is. We'll get into that in Q&A, all right? And then lastly, I think this is last. I don't know. I have a lot of testimonials, you guys, because the program's just that good. But this one is from Blunt Blowing Mama. Shanitria is the host of this podcast. I also featured her in a Side Hustle Pro episode, so you can look that one up on Side Hustle Pro podcast. A couple of months ago, when I had another masterclass, she shared this unprompted in her Instagram story. And, I said, can I screenshot and share? She said, sure. So she wrote, Side Hustle Pro is an amazing podcast coach. As someone who is one of her Podcast Mogul students, I can truly say she helped me get Blunt Blowing Mama podcast off the ground, grow BBM's IG page. I only had 3K followers when I started her program, and through her techniques, I've grown organically to over 21,000 engaged followers. Because of Podcast Moguls, I was able to find my tribe. And she even gave me helpful advice when I started the BBM clothing line too. She really knows her stuff. And if you want to really build a successful podcast, then her Podcast Moguls program is worth the investment. So I couldn't have paid for a better testimonial, but that's why I included here, because my students, the Podcast Moguls alums, they are experiencing the impacts and the power of this program. And that's all that I want. I want to see more people, really indie podcasters, really understanding the business of podcasting and reaping the benefits. So again, just to go over your options, again, it's sidehustlepro.co/podcast moguls. Do click the link in the Q&A, because you want to put in the HTTPS / all of that stuff. Sorry if the short link gave you an error message. It should not. Do go ahead and click that for your options. Option 1 is to pay $19.97, pay in full. You get the pay in full bonuses. And then option 2, 4 monthly payments of $500. Stacy asked, how long will we have access to you in the coaching part of the Podcast Moguls? How often are the coaching sessions? So the coaching sessions are monthly, and they're always done by myself. So you have access to me. You get 4 included with your package. However, I never turn anyone away if you want to keep coming back. So you have access to me for as long as the program exists, and I don't see myself ending the program anytime soon. All right. So this price, though, does go away on Friday, March 31st. The full price of this program, if you've gone over to sidehustlepro.co/podcast moguls, you know the regular price is $3,000. Okay. So $1,997, this price does go away. And do remember, though, that when you pay tonight, you qualify for pay in full bonuses. So keep that in mind as well. The pay in full bonuses are when you pay in full 2 nights. Okay. So just a reminder of everything you're getting: 8 modules of coursework, monthly live coaching sessions, lifetime community access, all of my sponsorship pitch letters and my media kit, my guest pitch templates, plus Master the Gram, plus the Goal Getter Action Plan, all of that for $1,997. Okay. Within Podcast Moguls, head over to sidehustlepro.co/podcast moguls. All right. Thank you guys so much for staying until the end. Please stick around for Q&A. Oh, and that Libsyn code is Hustle Pro to get the rest of this month and all of next month free on Libsyn.com. All right. So let me go ahead. I'll just giving you one last reminder of what your options are, option 1 or 2. All right. And so now we're going to get into Q&A, and let me pull up these questions. All right, you guys. Yes, the $1,997 price includes coaching, you guys. It includes coaching. So let me see if I can go back. Sometimes these slides on Zoom give me a little issue. I don't know why. Okay, here we go. So $1,997 includes all of this, my 8-module course, plus the monthly live coaching sessions, lifetime community access to our private community, all of my sponsorship pitch letters and media kit, my guest pitch templates, plus Master the Gram, plus the Goal Getter Action Plan. All right. So thank you again, and let's get into Q&A. Let's get into Q&A. Please be sure to let me know when you join so I can shout you out. Okie dokes. All right, I think I'm going to pull it up on my phone so I could just keep this up and not have to worry about any hijinks, any video hijinks if I switch to a different tab. But you guys let me know. Actually, okay, I'm going to pause this for a second. No, I'm not. I'm going to leave it right here. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to leave it on this screen, and let's get into Q&A, okay? Here we go. All right. So first question. Again, how long will we have access to you in the coaching part of the Podcast Moguls? Just answered this, but I want to make sure I clarify one more time. So the coaching sessions are monthly, every 3rd Wednesday, and you have access to me as long as the program exists. And again, I don't see this program ending anytime soon. So thank you, Stacy, for asking. Tamara asked, I need help with editing tips. Do you have software that will make that easier? I do share software tips that makes editing easier. Yes. And then of course, inside of Podcast Moguls, I also have a deep dive session with my editor and producer that goes over some podcast tips, but I share with you the independent, low lift, you're editing after work like I was tutorial inside of Podcast Moguls, because really what tends to happen is sometimes we over edit and we think we have to be perfect and make it sound like, we have to take out every and all of that, and we don't. And sometimes it can seem more daunting than it is, but when you see this tutorial and how we're literally just dragging and dropping things, we're using the arrow to lower levels and all of that good stuff, you see how you can actually make this a very user-friendly and even enjoyable process. So yes, I do provide a tutorial and editing tips. D. Bolton says, how do you make it easy to be found? All right, so let me know if you have a specific elements of this that you have a question on. As we went over this, we talked about the fact that you have to make sure that you understand what it is that you want to talk about, okay? And you select a niche, and then you make it clear that your show is about that niche with your topic, with your name, and you make it easy to be found when people are searching for keywords related to that topic. That should be in your title, that should be in your episode titles, that should be in your description. That's how you start to make it easy for you to be found. So if people are searching for Black woman side hustle, Black woman entrepreneurs, Black woman business owners, Side Hustle Pro is going to come up because that's in my portions of those keywords are in my show title, my episode titles, the episode descriptions, and the podcast show itself description. So that's how you make it easy to be found. All right, next question. I know you stated to find a niche. Oh, this is from Tanya. I know you stated to find a niche market, but how much can you talk about one topic? All right, so I'm glad you asked this, because a lot of times when I say niche down or become known for one thing, people think that you really have to get so specific that it becomes limiting. No. What it means is that instead of saying, oh, I have a podcast about health, or I have a podcast about even, here's a good one that everyone loves inside of Podcast Moguls, right? A podcast about motherhood. When I say you have to become known for one thing, I mean, you have to make it clear. What about motherhood? What aspects of that do you want to talk about, preparing for motherhood? Do you want to talk about juggling motherhood and career? Do you want to talk about what it's like to be a non-traditional mom in XYZ aspect? You have to get specific in that way. And then as you are narrowing down your topic, I share with you an exercise inside of Podcast Moguls that teaches you how to assess if your podcast topic has longevity, because I don't want you to run out of topics. I literally have you map out, okay, you think this is your topic. Now, what are you going to talk about for the next year? And if you start finding yourself just like running out of ideas, then either this is not the topic for you or you made it too narrow. So there is such a thing as going too narrow, and I help you work through that, because no, I don't want you to run out of, if you think I can't talk about one topic more than so much, then that's not the topic for you. Amanda says, what is a download? So Amanda, when you have a podcast, it is an audio podcast. A podcast is something that people have to download to listen to, whether that's on their device, on whatever device they're listening to podcasts on, and whatever streaming service they use to stream it. When people stream or download, it all counts as a download. So when you have a podcast, you do what's called host, aka you hold your files for that podcast on what's called a hosting platform. I use Libsyn. That's why I gave you the code Hustle Pro for Libsyn, so you could test it out for a month and a half free, right? So that your hosting platform, it keeps track of how many people are downloading each and every episode. It keeps track of them downloading it across all the platforms that they listen to it on, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, Google Podcasts, all of that can be tracked by your host. And so when we say downloads, we literally mean what tracks the listens on your podcast. It's tracking your listenership. And again, that is universally, the word stream and downloads are universally used interchangeably these days. All right. Abigail wants to know, what are your thoughts of posting to a YouTube channel and running a podcast at the same time? So Abigail, there are a couple of layers to this. Are you talking about like, oh, I have a YouTube channel already and I'm starting a separate podcast? Or are you talking about, I want to do a video version of my podcast and post it on YouTube and also post it across the audio platforms? So if you're still here, let me know which one you mean. But Nisa also wants to know the start date. So our next coaching call will be the third Wednesday in April. However, the course itself is on demand. So as soon as you join, you can jump in and start to dive into the modules and get yourself up to speed on the coursework and start right away. So it's a on demand, go at your own pace course. And then our coaching calls are every third Wednesday. So our next one will be in April. Okay. All right. So as far as this question that we were talking about, I think that podcasting in and of itself is an audio first platform. Okay. Your downloads are coming from audio platforms, and the downloads are what are used to measure and what's important to sponsors when they want to sponsor your show. So you need to prioritize that as a podcaster. You need to prioritize what is going to count in that sense. If you have space and bandwidth, to do video as well. And remember, this also means another round of edits and another round of promotion and all that good stuff. If you have the bandwidth for that, then yes, do both. But I absolutely recommend most podcasters, you should be starting with audio first, get really good at audio, and then if you have the bandwidth, loop in video. I only started doing video 5 years into podcasting. It's like my 5-year anniversary, upgrade, but it's absolutely, it's not necessary. And my YouTube views, because I upload it separately so that I can, put my own artwork and all this other stuff, it doesn't count toward my streams. So it really is just a completely different platform that's not being monetized in the same way. That's actually even harder to monetize. So, that's a whole other conversation that we can get into more in one of our live coaching calls, but we don't have time for it tonight. So I hope that helped. Okay. Nisa, what's the start date? We just went through that. So you can get started right away. It's just in time. Any tips on how to design cover art that will stand out? Yes, I go over that in the refine your topic and the refine your topic module inside of Podcast Moguls. And the long and short of it is there are different ways that you can stand out with podcast art. Some people are straightforward. Some people have, something where they use the art itself to signal what the show is about. So you might see like a show, I think, I forget the name of the show, but there's like a medical needle syringe with like blood dripping with blood dripping from it, that signals a little bit about, okay, this is going to be some kind of medical related drama. So there are things that you can use on your artwork to signal if you don't want to have a really long title. And then there are also podcasts that stand out just because they're just so beautifully done. The vibrancy and all of that stands out, but make sure you have something to back it up, AKA your description, your episode titles, the content of your show, because you'd hate to have a podcast artwork that just grabs people and then they come to your show and they're like, oh, I don't even know what this is about. This is kind of confusing, and they click right out. Okay. So again, I go over this in more depth inside of Podcast Moguls, but let me know if you have any other specific questions there. I hope that was helpful. EM says, if you currently have a business page, hold on. If you currently have a business page, should you create an entire, hold on. Should you create an entire new Instagram for the podcast you want to start in another niche? For example, a food blogger founder wanting to start a pod about personal development, entrepreneurship. Yes, you have to start a whole nother podcast page for this, unless, like, if you are, for example, a really big influencer with a big audience, and they would just, anything you launch, they're like, we're on it, we can't wait to hear, and you're launching a personal podcast just with your thoughts. That's one of the few cases where I'm like, no, you don't need to start a whole separate podcast page, probably, right? However, if you have a business about something entirely different, and then you want to start a show about a whole other topic, yes, you need to create a separate page and start doing the OMG work on that page, because it's too confusing. And not only that, as a personal brand, which is what you're going to start building with the show, if you're on today's show and your podcast is about, what did you say? Like, okay, if your show is about personal development and entrepreneurship, and they ask you for your URLs, you don't want to say, find me on, foodielover.com. Like, you want to make sure that you have that consistency and professionalism regarding your podcast and treat it like a business. All right. JY says, is there a deeper discount if you pay in full instead of getting all those templates? You are getting a deeper discount. The program itself is $3,000. You said, what's the success ratio of your students? You can see on your the testimonials on sidehustlepro.co/podcast moguls. So students have found success across all sorts of categories. So again, when you come into Podcast Moguls, everyone has a different goal. Some people want to speak. Some people want to monetize. Some people want to hit a certain milestone in downloads. And you'll see that across the testimonials of what people have been able to achieve. And it's really, really remarkable. And then finally, what percentage of your students saw an increase in followers, sponsorship, et cetera? I would say 100%. No one leaves the program without seeing who has done the work. Let me put that caveat and disclaimer. Everyone who has come to the program and done the work has seen that impact on their downloads and their followers. Nancy, how much time is involved in getting up and running in the beginning? How often do you podcast? Daily, weekly? Do you have older people in Podcast Moguls? Oh yes, we have a whole over 50, over 60 crew inside of Podcast Moguls. So whatever age group you are in, you'll find someone. There's someone who has a podcast. Oh, what's it called? But the whole premise of her show is helping people who have retired, who might, and especially the over 50 crew, to understand this is a new chapter in our life and we're beginning this, and like, let's go travel, let's go do stuff, like, here's how it's done. How much time is involved in getting up and running in the beginning? So I would say in the beginning, that is something that I really spread out. So I was big on what I call the 1 hour a day rule when I started, because that's really all I had the bandwidth for after working all day. I would just devote an hour a day to my dreams, to my podcast goals, all of that. So in the beginning, I would say start out with 1 hour a day, or if you have to batch on weekends, move some of that over to, a portion of your Saturday, a portion of your Sunday, and just focus on that at first. So it's not so much that, oh, it's going to take you 30 hours to get started. It is doing a focused hour a day will help you move forward. Okay. And then I podcast, AKA, do you mean how often do I release my podcast or how often do I record? So I record my podcast on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and I release a podcast every Wednesday, so weekly. And then finally, JY says, I have about 30 episodes pre-recorded already and I'm releasing them weekly. Would you recommend pitching only after a certain amount of published episodes or a certain amount of followers, or can you pitch as a brand new podcaster? So you can pitch as a brand new podcaster, but I can tell you it is very hard, and there's a much lower success rate because sponsors want to see what you've done. They want to see that you have an audience. And not only that, they need to know who they will be talking to. So when I pitch a sponsor, I'm not saying, hey, I'm Side Hustle Pro, I have this many downloads. I'm saying, hey, I have a show that's listened to by 95% women in this age group, this race, who are interested in these things, who take these actions. And I'm giving them not only demographics, but psychographics to help them determine, like, hey, we want to get in front of this group. And you saw that too with Tolu of the UI Narrative podcast. When Google came across her, they're like, oh my God, see, this is talking to the exact employee that we're having trouble recruiting. We need to get in front of this audience so that they can see, and so we can be connected with them. So I would say launch, make sure you're taking the steps to grow your show, and also to understand who your perfect listener is so that you can share that inside of a sponsorship pitch deck. And all of that I detail in module 7 and 8. So preparing yourself for monetization and then actually creating your winning pitch. So all of that is in those 2 modules, so that you can understand what you need to be getting, all the information that you need to be preparing in order to be successful with pitching. All right. So I think those were the last questions. Let me know, Joanna, if I missed any, or if I missed your question, please post it again. But those seems to be the last questions. All right. Thank you, JY. Got it. Thanks. So you guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I just really enjoy talking about this and teaching about this. If you have any additional questions, you can send me an email at hi@sidehustlepro.co. Happy to chat some more. And I can't wait to work with you and coach you. So if you have any further questions, just hit me up there. And thank you again for joining. And I'll be sending out the replay. All right. So with that, you guys have a great rest of your evening, and I will talk to you over email. All right. Good night.